Hey, this is Benjamin Boyce. And this is a very complex introduction because today I had a discussion with Lior Lesser of YouTuberlaw.com. That's his YouTube channel. He's also a tech lawyer. About a month ago, Patreon banned Sargon of Akkad, aka Carl Benjamin, from their services without any notification. Carl Benjamin told his supporters that he had set up an alternative means of support through Subscribestar. I also set up a Subscribestar account because I saw my Patreon supportage go way down very quickly. And then I saw a lot of people migrating from Patreon onto Subscribestar. Within a few days of Subscribestar receiving a whole bunch of free press, PayPal and then Stripe decided to cut Subscribestar off. Now, in the wake of all this happening, Lior Lesser came out publicly and declared that he was going to be filing a antitrust complaint with the FTC about PayPal's treatment of Subscribestar. In declaring that he was going to be filing a antitrust complaint, he received a ton of support and has found himself in the middle of an emergent, crowdsourced interest group that is composed of a number of talented people who are very concerned about the way in which these digital platforms are treating users. This is a very important topic of discussion because we're all very much impacted by the way that these companies are treating us and the way in which law is operating under the surface that dictates how they can treat us the way that they do. If you're interested in finding out more about this case and what Lior Lesser is doing in this realm, you can go to his YouTube channel, which is linked in the description, or you can find more information on YouTuberlaw.com. Here's Lior. From one YouTuber to another. I admire your work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
How
long have you been doing this?
I started in midway through 2017 when my college had a major moral panic. Evergreen State College.
Oh, that was your college? Sure.
Yeah. I was there when it happened, so I started reporting on that.
Oh, as a student, you were there?
Yeah, I was a student, late life student.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
interesting place to be at that a right moment in history. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very particular moment in history, and then that launched me into this whole YouTube thing that I had no idea existed, and just meeting tons of people from all walks of life.
And what do you think? Do you like it?
I love it. I think that there's a lot of work to be done. I think that it's still a nascent community. I think that there's still paths for it to grow that haven't been completely capped out. So I'm trying to test the waters and push the boundaries on what this can accomplish.
What do you think of yourself? Do you think of yourself more like a journalist, a commentator? Where do you stand on that?
Well, I try to perform my in the role of journalist when it comes specifically to Evergreen State College, trying to just map out as clearly as possible all the things that happened there and what led to it and what happened afterwards. And then I branched off into just the commenting thing where I take a op-ed or I take a story and I break it down.
Right.
But right now I'm experimenting with interviews and trying to talk to people who I disagree with, who I don't agree with, and try to model good dialogue in the long form,
you don't see that. You don't see that. Look, I mean, my little biased opinion is that many try to go the journalist route, but there's a lot more views commenting, giving your opinion. So the idea of speaking with somebody, especially when you don't agree with them, that's like a middle way of trying to present both ways without having yourself present something that you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. Plus, it's mixed for a much more interesting engagement.
Yeah. There's an audience for it, but I don't think that it's time consuming, and I don't think people are used to it. So I think that there's a novel thing to it, and I think that there's some stretching that has to happen with the community to enter into that.
I agree with you. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are out there, but to get the benefit, you've got to do it for a long time. For instance, live stream on YouTube, when it comes to not my gaming live stream, but actually conversation, is something that if you want to build it to have a substantial audience, you've got to put a lot of time into it, because it's not a natural facility with people to talk. Because normally most live streams are, to me, relatively boring, because it's all about you saying whatever you want to say live, which I don't care at that point. Might as well be a recorded video. But if you get to a point where there's engagement and you're engaging the audience and you let them be part of it, a lot of times they're not used to it either, because sometimes people would read comments but not really engage them. But that just takes a long time. So same thing with talking to people and stuff like that. It's been done in the sense that there's collaboration, there's stuff like that. In my opinion, they're badly done. And to create quality stuff where people actually think through the topic and everybody respects each other, but they're just opposed to it, you basically have to teach your audience that exists, and it just takes a long time. And your audience that liked you when you were giving your own comments may not be the people that will go along with you when you're talking about that. So sometimes there's just changes and stuff like that over time. Some people get upset that you've changed your formats and stuff like that. So.
Well, aptly enough, that's kind of what got you into this position, insofar as Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, was on a live stream with people that he disagreed with. And it was the manner in which he disagreed that Patreon used to kick him off. And then that started the whole ball rolling. So So you want to do you want to give like a brief summary of like why you stood up to this, and what happened, and then what your role is in this?
Okay. What got me involved in here? Well, it's like everything else. It's tiny little things over time, because for over a year, everybody's been talking about people getting deplatformed. And so I'm getting lots of questions. If you look on Twitter, there's maybe a handful of attorneys that get basically every legal question that's out there being sent out, and usually they tag me on it, and that usually drives some of the videos that I do. And the question is always, what can we do? What can we do to fight against being deplatformed? And I can tell you that most people were unhappy with my response, because the way the law is, and it's not an opinion, meaning I don't usually give my opinion about this because I often don't really know much about the individual who got deplatformed. Usually these are topics that don't particularly interest me. I'm a geek. I like video games. I like technology. You give me a video about how a camera works, I can spend an hour looking at it, but other stuff don't interest me. So I often don't know the people involved here. But the law is very clear about it, that on the one hand, these companies have rights of free speech. They can terminate you because they don't like you. They don't want to be associated with you. It's a strange thing. I've done so many studies on how it developed, how corporate rights of free speech developed. It's 200 years of history. I can't tell you that I agree with the logic that an artificial entity has the same rights as you and I when it comes to speaking. It's not related to ownership or who's the shareholder. It's not related to who's running it. It's not related to the employee. It's right that are attributed to the artificial entity in and of itself. But that's just the reality of our law. So when you go through it, there's two things. First of all, it's free speech. They're allowed to ban you legally, so there's often very little you can do. And if you're showing, then people ask, well, about antitrust, collusion, and stuff like that, you say, well, you're showing me lots of evidence that things are happening in parallel. There was a shooting in Pittsburgh, right? And right away, Apple removes Gab off of its app store. And right away, you see that PayPal removes their payment facility. And I don't remember who did not want to host their domain. And whoever hosted the server did not. So it moved. And so, well, is that collusion? Well, legally, it's parallel action, what's called conscious parallelism. The law sees that a lot of companies acting, just because you see a competitor do something and you're doing it too, doesn't mean that there is collusion. It might be evidence, but often you don't know if there's anything wrong until you got a whistleblower, somebody telling you, some email that exposes everybody. So the law it's considered evidence, does not say it's sufficient to start an investigation or to move forward. Normally those cases get dismissed very quickly under a motion to dismiss. And so we've gone for like a year where all the videos about this topic were the same because it's always the same question, and people are not happy because, well, what is the solution? So then I started to, okay, let's talk about solutions to it. And there is the one solution that can take care of it all, but most people that respond to that one solution don't like it. People who are liberal don't like it, and conservative don't like it. That means that you have to increase the number of protected classes, right? So we have protected classes based on race, sex, age, national origin, disability. You would have to say that political speech or political association is a protected class. And then you would have to say that you're not allowed to actually discriminate against that protected class online. So you have to make websites the equivalent of what a restaurant or hotel is, which is public accommodation. So you'd have to pass that kind of a law at the federal level to do that. And most people are just not that interested in adding more protected classes around that. So it's a solution, but at least most people that commented on what I was saying that, conservative Republican, we don't know if we want to go that route. What are other solutions? So then you get into, well, there's other stuff you can do, and you get into a lot of arguments over, people say, well, get rid of Section 230, which immunizes websites against any liability associated with what their users are putting in it. And that's like a red herring. That's not going to get you anywhere. So you get into all of that. And then, so that's the process of, like a year, maybe a year and a half of conversations. And then same thing happened when Sargon got banned. I have the same kind of video and then a follow-on video saying, okay, these are the 5 or 6 solutions that I can offer you. None of them are very attractive. You often have to rely on Congress to do something. And if you put money down on what's the likelihood of Congress actually doing something over the last 20 years, you would have lost a lot of money. I don't know if this is parallel outside of the country, but we have for 20 years, doesn't make a difference who's in power, Republican or Democrats, nothing really gets done. Sometime when there's full control of House, they get 1 or 2 things done, but not very productive. So counting on Congress to solve your problem is probably not it. So I did that video and got mixed reviews. And then PayPal took down Subscribestar. And I said, well, that makes no sense. Who the hell is Subscribestar? I never heard of it. And everybody else that I was talking to that we have no idea what Subscribestar is. And I find out this is basically a startup, been in operation for a year, really didn't promote itself, just had a few creators on it and a few people supporting them. Their idea, I guess, was to grow more organically. So they weren't out there. Nobody really heard of them. But they were basically effectively an alternative to Patreon. And once Sargon got banned, there was so much PR placed on them because they just got free advertisement. We got to go somewhere. Where? Well, there's a place called Subscribestar. It still is already operating, been doing it for a year. Nobody's complaining. So inadvertently, they now were the focus, a lot of free advertisement and PR of something unrelated to them. And within 5 days, PayPal takes away their facility, and a day later, Stripe takes away their facility. So so to me, that makes no sense. Why would you take down a company that has no expressive value? Meaning, right? Some companies you can say that, well, they are a center for hate or extremism or something. At least you could say that, even whether or not it's true or not is separate.
Yeah.
But a brand new company with not much of anything to them, just a few creators, no real transactions, no complaints. Why are you shutting them down? And then that's what I researched. That's the kind of research led me to what's known as the plus factor. If you got a bunch of parallel actions, but you can show this kind of a plus factor, something that would divide a company doing something against its best interest that may indicate collusive behavior. That's what's called a plus factor in law, and that gets you beyond what in a case would be a motion to dismiss, or in the FTC's case, maybe to a point where an investigation starts. So it's really that. It's the going after by PayPal, going after Subscribestar that just ignited my interest, and that's where everything started.
And the plus factor is that PayPal would only be just keep on making money with Subscribestar.
Yeah, if they're losing money out of Patreon because people are upset and they're moving away, then doesn't make any sense to kill where they're moving to because it's the same money. PayPal is just making the same money again. Why would you shut down a company because outside people are paying attention to it. People
Yeah.
that you might disagree with saying, I'm going to move there. Let's say you're so opposed to Sargon that you say, look, as PayPal, I don't want to be associated with him. Maybe
Hmm.
you would go to them and say, we do not want you to provide that facility to Sargon. Then you still have an argument. Is that legal or not? But nonetheless,
Yeah.
let's say that's get pushed on them. That's a separate issue. But what would move you without warning to kill off an entire company, a facility? So, which makes no sense. So that led me to the concept of what's called group boycott, which it's been
Hmm.
done many times by the FTC, which is two companies don't have to be on the same level. In this case, let's say PayPal and Patreon that have substantial, they'll be right, they'll be vertical, that have substantial market power working to exclude a competitor.
Yeah.
In this case, it looks, I'm not saying it's proof of it. That's the whole point, that you have to get past it. It looks like there is an arrangement between PayPal and Patreon to exclude certain people that PayPal does not want to provide payment facilities to in exchange for some protection against potential competitors.
Hmm.
So that's where the argument started.
Yeah. And PayPal, so far as I know, has PayPal, they have not banned Sargon from receiving income through just direct donations.
I don't know. I don't know
And
what.
so you don't know. Oh, and did they make any statement about why they backed out of Subscribestar?
No, not as far
Nothing.
as Subscribestar is concerned,
Huh.
at least. There's been almost no real communications with
Huh.
them.
And so you've decided to file a antitrust complaint
Right, with the FTC.
with the FTC. So, and then as soon as you started doing that, a bunch of people came out of the woodwork to support you financially, but also
Yeah,
with legwork, right?
exactly. I This was basically the week of Christmas,
Yeah.
and if you watch the video I did, I'm on a balcony. That was actually Universal Studios in Orlando, and it's really early in the morning, and I've been thinking about it for a few days of, should I do this? Should I actually
Hmm.
do this? And I figured, you know what? I've done lots of reviews of cases dealing in video games. If
Hmm.
you want to know a rough crowd, have an opinion against somebody's favorite video game. The things people say in comments, I don't read comments on a lot of those videos. It's usually they attribute certain actions to me and what I'm doing to other men. That's usually how the comments go. So it's hilarious comments. But so I decided, I've learned enough I'm gonna post it, and I'm just gonna ignore everything. I'm gonna go to Universal Studio, and I'm just gonna turn off Twitter and comments and
Hmm.
anything else. So, because I didn't think it will be accepted very well. I thought people will say, "What are you doing it? It's a self-promotion.
Hmm.
What's the purpose? It's not going to go anywhere." But the result was just the opposite. So when I started looking at it, suddenly emails are coming in too. So I didn't really shut off email because normally people did not communicate by email with me. So I'm getting tons of emails
Hmm.
of just support and just great ideas and how can we help and what can we do and can we be part of it. And that just changed the entire dynamics, because I thought of this as, this will be a project, and I had to speak to my wife, because it was like, I have,
Hmm.
5 days a week to work. And I said, realistically, I'm going to have to probably give up a single day out of the week in order to do this, because,
Hmm.
it's gonna take a chunk out of. I have 4 kids, one in college.
Hmm.
It's gonna be troublesome. Could be problematic. I have no idea. She said, you've been talking about it forever. You feel like it, just do it.
Hmm.
Um, my wife sometimes is blind that way. She just, whatever I say, she agrees. She thinks I'm
Oh
right. I mean,
no.
she hasn't learned after 20 years that sometimes she has to say no to those things, but she's always supportive.
Hmm.
So, but the response was so overwhelming that suddenly
Hmm.
from an idea of, I'm going to do this once a week and it can take me 6 months, maybe more, to accomplish, suddenly there's a lot of people, and some amazing people. You start talking to some of these individuals and the skills they bring and the experience they bring and what they do in their life and the stuff they've been involved in. Amazing people that can contribute so much and make this, not only the complaint, far better than I could ever done on my own, because of the resources and the stuff that they can provide, but provide and basically set up an organization that
Yes.
that can make this much more effective, because the FTC is still a political organization. It reacts a lot of time to what's happening out there because it's like infinite cases it can take on,
Yeah.
and it's always going to be limited. It's a bunch of lawyers, that work for the government, but they're not really answerable really to Congress or the president. They have more independence, but they're very powerful. So they tend to have a certain amount of PR to it. If something is going to get a lot of attention, they move toward it. They've done some what do you call it? Investigation of YouTubers and Instagrammers when it came to whether or not we are properly providing information, disclosures on supporters and not supporters. What do you call it? Advertisers and stuff. Are we getting paid to provide opinion? Stuff like that. So they've been watching everything, and so to increase the likelihood of this being taken on by the FTC. Social media pressure is very important. Raising the topic in consciousness because they're watching is very, very important. Maybe bringing in some of the non-for-profit like the Electronic Frontier Foundation and those kind of organizations that are interested in sometimes privacy, sometimes free speech, sometimes just our rights online, digital rights, some industry association. Bringing those on board makes a big difference because the successful complaints a lot of time have, friends of the court kind of opinion where people are submitting opinions in support of the complaint or their versions of it. Some are by formal organizations, some are just, people writing up their opinion. But all that matters because the FTC reacts to that as well. It's kind of you're trying to sell them on the idea that this is worthy of their attention. It's going to make a big impact on the market. So it changed the entire dynamics and now create a situation where there's a potential to make this a lot better than I thought originally. Yeah. But now it's got a challenge of actually putting together an organization that accomplish it. And that's kind of what been a huge focus of mine the past few weeks.
Yeah, this emergent crowdsourced law firm is just kind of assembling around you. Do you see, beyond the antitrust case, is there any possibility that this might move the way that these companies are treating the user base towards being more lenient or even towards establishing an internet bill of rights or something like that? Is there any possibility of that, or is it just this antitrust?
Okay, so I don't believe that that on their own they'll change the way it is, and there's some flaws in our it's a legal system flaws. It has nothing to do with them. Companies are going to react in a way that maximizes their ability to do whatever they need to do, right? Okay. So just to be transparent, the kind of stuff that everybody hates, all those terms of service rules, I've written hundreds of them, and they're almost identical. The one from Patreon are especially bad in the sense that they are very confusing, and you have to go down level with the read more. They thought they're making it easy, so that's really a bad version of it. But the kind of terms of service you see on most websites, I've written them now, and it's designed because that's what clients want. They want the ability to do whatever they want to do when they do it. You have no idea how they'll apply it. Will you apply it to kick out people that disagree with you, or it's really more, well, no, our product changes. We need technically to terminate everybody because we need a different user base now. So we need that kind of complete right to terminate at any moment. So you build the tools for your clients, but never know how they'll use it down the line. So the problem here is that in order for them to change, other things have to change. You have to change the legal ramification of what happens here. And so the antitrust thing is a very small solution, right? So it's designed to prevent collusion that undermines the ability to have alternative platforms for anybody. So if you're getting deplatformed because whatever you're saying is not acceptable for whatever reason it is by the board of directors of that company, at the very least, you should be able to move somewhere else where the free market would dictate that somebody can create a platform for people who are otherwise disfavored. So Gab should be able to exist. Subscribestar should be able to exist because ultimately that's good for the market, competitiveness in the market. So the antitrust is designed to stop this idea that companies should take down potential competitors who are providing platform for disfavored individual, disfavored speech. So it's a very small solution. The bigger one of how you treat it, that's not going to be resolved here, because your biggest hurdle is the concept of free speech. We're allowed to disassociate ourselves from you because that is expressive of something we believe in, or expressive of our disagreement with you. And that's hard to argue, except that there are things you can do, because 20 years ago, I don't know how old you are, but 20 years ago, you had people signed what's contracts that are one-sided, but they weren't very common, called contracts of adhesion, right? So most contract, I want to buy your house, we're going to negotiate, and we can go through line by line and negotiate everything. That's normal, and the courts are going to support our agreement, even if I regret it later on. But a contract of adhesion, one that's just placed in front of you, sign it or don't sign it, that's it. You have no chance of actually negotiating, and if you don't like it, go elsewhere. Well, those were not as common. They always existed, but today, in the past 20 years, especially the past 10 years, it's everywhere. You probably, in the past 10 years, signed hundreds of those without thinking twice. I agree, I accept, every single website you've ever gone to, every service, everything you've ever done online had one of those. And the reality that you have all these contracts, but they are still interpreted the way they were when there were very, very few of those, which is you sign it, you abide by it. And there are some legal problems with that, involving what used to be called unconscionable provisions, that certain provisions should not be able to force on people without some remedy. So if you want to change how people treat individuals on board, you would go to the state level, and you would actually pass contract law, which something that federal law has no hand in, and will hold, that say that in contracts of adhesion, like all the ones online where you don't get to negotiate, you're not in a position to ever just terminate somebody at the drop of a hat for any and all reason. There has to be a process for it that justifies it. Now, it doesn't solve everything, but it means that if Patreon wanted to terminate, first of all, they would have to give notice, an opportunity to cure, which is normally in a contract. Every contract, I would not sign a contract where I'm investing time and effort and money, and then I can be terminated at the drop of a hat. You'd want, well, let me know what I did wrong. Give me 30 days to cure it. If I fail to cure it, then you terminate. And even then, there is a real appeal process to work through. So it's the problem that we have moved to all these unique contracts that everybody assume should be able to be terminated at the drop of a hat, while in reality, the states can have a lot of say in it. It doesn't take away from the company's right to terminate you, but it builds a process that they have to work with that has to identify it. Let exactly what it is, gives you an opportunity to cure. Maybe have some sort of a repeat offender where you constantly are doing it. You don't have to necessarily give them always a chance to cure it for 30 days. But, some reasonable process dealing with these contracts, and that will change a lot, because it'll be a much more transparent and create a process where people can actually fix. Because you think about big names that people could say, well, the entire body of work I disagree with. But in reality, most people are getting banned because of one thing. They have no chance of actually, they don't know exactly why they got banned. They have no way of appealing. You're just terminated. Go talk to somebody.
Yeah. So it seems like there's two ways to remedy that. Like the free market possibly could lead to these organizations or these platforms online that do abide by a quid pro quo or some sort of contract law where we're going to very clearly, you have a buffer. We do have laws. We will kick you off if then and this and that. And then the consumer can go and choose. The other solution is that a law takes place, maybe in California or in New York, and then that affects the whole ecosystem where internet companies are not allowed, or they have to abide by these rules. Everybody does, basically.
Exactly, because the way it works in our states is that if any state passes that kind of a law, a tech company has no way of actually putting a geofence around Tennessee. So they basically are then have to do the same thing everywhere. So
Hmm.
it there's a certain reality right now. A lot of companies, especially Apple, is pressing for Congress to pass, let's say, privacy laws that are national in scope, and it sounds reasonable. The problem is that with Congress never getting anything done, you can be assured that 30 years from now, they'll still be dealing with a 30-year-old privacy law that they passed today, and nothing will ever get done. And the only kind of power that consumers have had has actually been through their own state, because when it comes to privacy, California has led the way. The reason why you have a privacy policy is, thank God that California passed a law that required it. It had some restrictions, because otherwise the federal government does nothing whatsoever. They have followed some rules, some FTC stuff have followed what California has done. But there is a great deal of power in being in a state where you can pass like a contractual law and obligation, and that actually impacts the entire country. It's not efficient. I can see why people say, well, for a tech company, we want to have one law. We don't want to have to deal with 50. But the reality of it, it's the only sort of power that people had. Yeah. It's the only thing that have changed, because we're literally dealing a lot of time with laws passed in 1996 when we had CompuServe and Prodigy, and we didn't have the internet as we know it at all. There was no internet. It was just access points to what was just connected computers.
Yeah, the federal government is not, thankfully, it's set up in a way that it can't change too quickly, so it can't make really horrible decisions. But technology has progressed so much faster than the law that we're going to keep on seeing these problems emerge. And this is just another flashpoint of, not being able to be updated correctly. Is the FTC able to pass this law or to pressure something like this with these companies?
The FTC probably will not touch that law, because the FTC is really about competition in the marketplace and to preventing any sort of false advertisement. So that would be the monopoly, the competitive side, or false advertisement and stuff like that. So they have their charter. They're not. They can absolutely. All the time they make suggestions. They want changes in the law, but they're not. They wouldn't deal with contract law, because that is really the purview of the state. And to do that, it's part of what possibilities that emerge as a result of the unexpected development of this kind of crowdsource interest group, essentially. That if this experiment can work, if we can get this done, can we then push over to, can we target any of specific states where we can work maybe through the bar associations that often build, or the American Bar Association that builds some of the more common laws that a lot of states adopt almost uniformly, and then actually work to pass certain basic contract laws that would not interfere with federal rights of free speech to those corporations. So it creates possibilities which are kind of dependent on how successful we are now, because obviously if we're not successful in working together toward a single aim, then the rest of it is meaningless.
Yeah, so this is kind of a proof of concept then that can go on to actually do bigger changes or force the law to adapt to the behavior of these giants and the consumers.
That's what it's ending up being. It's something it was never anticipated, obviously, originally, but it seems that, and again, so far, if you get an occasion to speak to some of these individuals, they're so impressive. And you'd be amazed at the kind of support that basically you'd think about, maybe half are American, half are from other countries, especially Britain and Australia, where they have so many of the comments and calls of support coming from those states, because they have their own problems, very, very similar, the same kind of concerns about rights of free speech in Australia and the UK. So it's a very diverse team, but very, very impressive group of people. And the question is, can we harness everybody in a single direction and get it done?
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that people can get in contact with this project and support this project? Is there a name for the project?
Not yet.
You gotta get a name.
That's probably one of the biggest things, because can you come up with a hashtag that then can be used as a domain name and everything else, and you get enough people involved. That's part of you learning,
a hub.
Who needs to have a conversation, who can make a decision, how do you exclude the other 20 people from everything. So it's part of it, what it takes in a large organization to get something done. So I have a bunch of them that that are being proposed there. I need to go through them and talk to the people involved. But right now, if people just go to youtuberlaw.com, it's where we are connecting all of the resources. Eventually, that turned into its own website. Right now, it's just a page, but it's where we're connecting to the. If people want to get involved actually and participate, a lot of it is done through a Discord that has been set up. You can reach it through YouTuber Law, and which is divided into a number of different operational groups. You know, typically what happens is I get people message me on Twitter. I have a conversation with them, usually 10, 15-minute conversation, get a sense of what they're into, what they want to be involved, how they can help, and then basically connect them with the guy that manages the Discord, and he puts him in contact with the groups actually working on it, because everything has to be managed from this is, the tasks for each kind of subgroup and what they have to accomplish and stuff like that. So there is a process. Anybody that wants to get involved, that find it interest, we have lawyers, we have law students that want to support it. We have people that kind of involving in business research. A lot of this involves understanding the market power of the players and the impact, the negative impact that actions can have on competition in the marketplace. There's an IT group that's working on different tools, and there's a kind of a content group that works on actually building the stuff that then provides it, because the idea is to provide tools for people that want to be engaged so they can help. Even if they're not part of the group, they can actually work through the website, let's say sending things to their congressman and stuff like that. So youtuberlaw.com. So that's one way participating. And, people can also use that to help us fund the project, because, what I thought would be one day has now been every single day, 7 days a week for the last 3. It's literally, I've turned down so many clients with an apology that I don't believe I can even get back to you in time, So I have to apologize, but I'm hoping that this will kind of die down at some point once all the organizational thing, and we can focus, each person focus on what they do. But right now it's kind of an overwhelming process of setting it all up. But, today just joined literally maybe, a half an hour before we got on. I'm on Subscribestar. Never been on Subscribestar, so I'm on it. And then, there are other ways to join. Everybody can learn it through YouTuber Law. And if they want to communicate, send emails, talk to us, and see if they help. So there's lots of different ways people can engage if they're interested.
Is there a time frame for at least the antitrust complaint?
Not right now, because right now, having spoken to a bunch of the attorneys, right now I'm basically finishing my outline of what the complaint looks like, the different sections that have to be written, and then the job next week is actually to meet and cut it up into pieces and start it out. It's definitely not going to take as long as before. It's not going to be a 6 months or a year project. I'm hoping that this is a 90-day project that can get us the complaint. It's the other stuff in support of it that can take longer, which is, how do we get support and people writing to the FTCs and maybe some recommendations from Congress and stuff, and some of the not-for-profit. So this is not a quick process in terms of we might be able to get in 90 days the complaint submitted, but this is a process that can take sometimes years before it's accomplished. And the result typically is, just many $1 million of settlements. It's nothing to us. It's all to the government. The government benefits from any of the resultant action.
Interesting. So in a way, like, there's a lot of attention on this right now, but the process to actually get anything done is going to take a lot longer than the interest in it. But this is a rather pressing issue. Right. This is we're talking about the reality of the internet and what it means to be a virtual citizen, and how these companies that are basically the marketplace or the public square can treat the public. So this is a pretty intense and important issue going forward. So
I agree. I mean, there's a certain reality that today people are interested. In a month from now, they'll move on to something else. But if you look at the past year and a half, this is something that repeats itself over and over again. So even if they don't care about what happened here in this specific situation, the topic has been a hot topic for quite a while. So, and there's a certain reality that I know that interest will dip, but that's kind of my commitment. It's like at the end of the day, if everybody leaves and I'm on my own again, and then that's what I have to do. I have to submit the complaint. It's just, as a group we can do a better job and faster than me alone. So I'm cognizant of this. This will wear itself out after a while, but it's a topic that rises up because the pattern seems to be happening all the time. Wait a month, somebody else will be banned, and that will be the next topic.
Yeah, and even if the tech companies like hold off on like the progress, it seems like they've been progressively testing who they can ban and who they can ban. They started with Laura Southern, and they had video footage of her like doing something questionable. And then they went after Alex Jones this past fall, and everybody's like, well, he's kind of an asshole, so who cares? Yeah. And then they went after Sargon for whatever reason. That was the flashpoint where you have Rubin and Peterson and Sam Harris all just saying, okay, hold on now. Yeah. So with your commitment and your group actually going forward, that shows, along with Peterson and Harris and Rubin all reacting to this, that might even just optically slow down the progress of these companies from seeing who they can kick off, or at least being more straightforward with how they're deciding who to kick off.
I hope so, because I mean, one thing you see historically, that when the FTC is investigating you, you change your behavior. A lot of the benefits of FTC investigation, exactly. Companies are afraid. It's multi-year. It costs them enormous amount of resources. Sometimes they literally place people in your offices to check on what you're doing. They have the power, the subpoena power. They don't have to go to a court. They can sign their own subpoenas asking you to deliver to them all your confidential emails about who you're speaking to. So it tends to stop certain behavior. So I'm hoping that that's the case, that maybe people sit back and say, well, it's not a free-for-all. At some point, people will actually want to do something about it. But I can't control that part. I can only control what we are trying to do.
So one last question. What do you think about like an internet bill of rights? Like something that's more consumer friendly.
Right.
Is that something that we need? Is it possible?
I think that it depends what people mean by it, because there was maybe a year ago, like one of those online petitions for an internet bill of rights that largely dealt with this particular topic about people's right of free speech and stuff like that. I think that will never get anywhere. Again, you're asking Congress to pass. That's something that's going to be very, very partisan, and you're never going to get it passed, because people are going to say, well, is this only something that conservatives want? Why would a liberal support it? But there is currently a proposal being circulated. I forgot which congressman proposed it. That is a true internet bill of rights, where it has, I think 10 different topics that he calls for a discussion. This is one of the topics, as well as a lot of privacy issues about who owns data. Is it yours? Is it a company that collects it? And the idea is that there is not a specific solution. It's not a law to forbid, let's say, discrimination online, but rather say these are the 10 topics when it comes to the Internet Bill of Rights that we need to deal with. Yeah. Let's work through it. Maybe out of those we can agree to 2, and that will be progress, because we'll move somewhere. Because right now, when you're presenting one issue, everybody can talk about, well, that is favor of the Democrats, or it's in favor of the Republican. But if you look at all the 10, they're so diverse. Just things that impact us every single day because the reality of our digital life. I think that has a chance if Congress wants to do the work, if they want to compromise, if people are willing to sit together, have a discussion, and figure out, well, what is really best for the majority of the people. I don't think that's usually how Congress works. So I like it, but I don't have a lot of hope that on its own Congress will actually do anything.
Yeah, but it certainly is a conversation that we need to have and be aware of. Yeah. Well, thanks for your time. I'm sure you're super busy. I'm going to put this out and hopefully get more awareness on your project.
I really
think
appreciate
it's fascinating
it.
On just the topic itself is fascinating, very important, but like what's happening with the amount of support and this emergent kind of coalition of people, of interested parties coming together. That's another strong point about what the internet is capable of. And
yes. I completely agree. That's the part that I never expected, and I think, frankly, it's the most interesting part, because the potential of this kind of virtual organizations of a lot of people of different interests, there's a lot of things that are not necessarily interesting to me as a topic, but people are, and the ability to gather together to actually accomplish something, that's an incredible, rather than just argue about things and send some mean tweets about what we think about was this kid rude to that vet or not. Actually accomplishing something.
Yes.
That's the potential.
Yeah, absolutely.